I don't accept that kids being murdered at school is something that we should be used to. I don't accept that kids getting killed in the streets is something we should get used to. I didn't accept gun violence ripping apart our cities and communities every day, and I'm going to do everything I can to change the administration in Washington and fight back against this evil. It's not the only problem this country has, but it's certainly one that we can focus on today.
So you clearly want to play this blame game, so we'll play it. If anyone is getting used to these types of violence, it's you. For decades, your only solution to the very particularized issues of violence, which you literally pointed out in this speech, has been more gun control. There has been absolutely zero nuance in any of your solutions. It's been the same response for decades. An epidemic of people dealing with emotional and mental distress causing them to become suicidal? Oh, just sprinkle some gun control on it. Inner city communities plagued with joblessness, homelessness, poor education, and health? Oh, just sprinkle some gun control on it. Kids with known histories of mental health issues, with social skill issues, and lack of coping mechanisms want to indiscriminately kill people? Oh, just sprinkle some gun control on it. But when we say, how about we address the underlying issues of all of these problems specifically so that none of these people feel the need to pick up a gun in the first place, we're the ones who don't care.
When I started working on gun violence some 15 years ago, neither party, neither the Republicans or the Democrats, were particularly interested in the issue. In fact, some Democrats voted against the Brady background check bill back in the 1990s, and some even voted to give blanket immunity to the gun industry, something no other industry in the United States has. That really was shameful, and as president, I will work to repeal it.
Wait, so right now you're saying the Brady bill isn't working, so we need more gun control, while at the same time criticizing people who didn't vote for the Brady bill because they felt it wouldn't work. And no, it wasn't blanket immunity. It was actually the opposite. The gun industry was one of the only industries that could be held liable for someone else using their products to commit a crime. So the law was passed to limit those types of claims. Gun manufacturers do not have blanket immunity. They can still be held liable for products liability, just like every other industry. This guy is a liar.
When I was mayor of New York City, I co-founded the National Coalition of Mayors Against Illegal Guns that we talked about before. We enlisted more than 1,000 other mayors from red states and blue states. But even after Democrats won control of both Congress and the White House back in 2008, gun safety just was not a priority. And sadly, when we had the opportunity to do something about it, it just fell by the wayside.
That's because it wasn't about gun safety. It was about you trying to use government officials to disarm the people, and the people weren't going for it. The Second Amendment was literally written for people like you.
When I left City Hall in 2014, I didn't walk away from the fight, though. I got even more involved because it seemed to me I had more time, and why not devote my life to the same thing that I had when I was mayor. I helped found Everytown and helped build it into a counterweight to the NRA. And today, Everytown and Moms Demand Action have an army of 6 million supporters. Think about that, 6 million supporters, and they are shaking up politics across the country.
You didn't help Everytown, you bought and paid for it. You throw money around like a political John or trick and then try to pass it off as grassroots. That's like meeting a girl on Sugar Babies and telling people she really loves you. Nah, she don't love you, she loves your money. But you know this and you don't care because you're a megalomaniac obsessed with power. And what can be a more grand display of power than to be the man who single-handedly disarmed the American people? As far as I'm concerned, Bloomberg is the Second Amendment Antichrist.
Since last year, 20 states have passed significant new gun laws, including 9 signed by Republican governors. So if you just go and knock on the door in your red shirts, or you write letters, or you pick up the phone and you call, you are making a difference. Elected officials are responsive. They've just got to hear enough people say, this is what I want, and this is the reason I'm going to vote for you or not vote for you, and you will get the action that you're demanding.
For all of the people who ask me what they can do to protect their rights, do everything Bloomberg just said and then some. No, I'm serious. Do everything he said because it's true. We have to remember politicians work for us, but they largely live in a bubble filled with people like Bloomberg. We have to make our voices heard so that they understand the true sentiment of the American people. Bloomberg buys people to go out, wear their anti-gun shirt, and make fake noise, and our politicians think that's what the people want. We have to counter the fake message with our real message. So I agree with Bloomberg here. Put on your pro-gun shirts, knock on their doors, pick up the phones, write your letters, because I promise you, it does make a difference as long as there's enough people doing it.
But unfortunately, we have a president who bows down to the extremists who run the NRA and cannot tolerate that. I believe we need a president who has a track record of taking on the NRA and winning. And you say, why do I think I can do it? Because I've done it.
Again, Bloomberg is telling you everything you need to know about his stance on the Second Amendment. I assure you, Trump is no extremist when it comes to the Second Amendment. I believe he is pro-2A, but he has made some concessions on things that I and a lot of people in the gun community do not agree with. So for Bloomberg to call him an extremist tells you that Bloomberg is a savagely anti-Second Amendment politician. He is not only anti-Second Amendment, he's anti-Constitution. The man literally said, I do think there are certain times when we should infringe on freedoms. He wants to be a dictator, not a president.
To begin with, if I'm lucky enough to get elected, we're going to overhaul the background check system to make it much more effective. No one should be able to buy a gun without passing a complete background check, and we're going to get that done.
A universal background check, that's what he's talking about. What this means is that all private gun sales will have to have a background check. Now, how would they enforce this? Well, right now, they can't. It would be on an honor system because there's no centralized database, i.e. a gun registry, of all the guns to check whether someone got a background check done on a particular gun. History has proven time and time again, where there is a gun registry, a gun confiscation is soon to follow. It's just logic. Because even with the universal background check, criminals will still get guns. So the government will say, universal background checks, well, that didn't work. So now we just need to confiscate all the guns, and they'll use the registry to do it.
We'll also close loopholes and gaps in the systems, like the one allowing unmarried domestic abusers to possess guns.
Bloomberg, under the Violence Against Women Act, wants to bar anyone convicted of federal misdemeanor domestic abuse from purchasing or owning a firearm. Right now, it only applies if the victim is a current or former spouse, or they have a child with the victim. If you're just dating or sleeping together, it doesn't apply. Keep in mind, domestic abuse can be considered a lot of things, from stalking and harassment to physical abuse. Even within those designations, there are ranges. Sending multiple text messages can be considered harassment. So, if the goal of the law is to prevent someone who they think is violent or will become violent from owning a gun, and what they did was so bad that it violated or validated these concerns, charge them with a felony. The range of things that can be considered misdemeanor domestic abuse is way too broad for it to automatically strip you of your rights to self-defense. And not to mention, way too easy to be abused by scorned lovers. And not to mention, why only guns? Why not ban them from owning knives? There are way more knives in people's homes than there are guns. If this is about protecting women, why not ban them from all weapons? Because it's not about protecting women. It's about attacking gun rights from every angle possible.
And the one allowing sales to go through if a background check takes longer than 3 business days.
Of course you want to get rid of this requirement, because if you did, it would give you a blank check to artificially stall gun purchases for as long as you want. Right now, it's 3 days, then it'll be 10 days, then a month, then a year. There'd be no limit on how long they could take on a background check. This isn't even a potential slippery slope because the evidence is already there. It takes 6 months to a year just to do a background check for suppressors. It takes 3 to 4 months just for me to simply have a gun that's shorter than 16 inches.
And the one preventing law enforcement from identifying felons and others who own guns illegally.
Hey, Bloomberg, why don't you come out and say what it is you really mean, you human Decepticon? He's talking about a national gun registry. This is how full of it these people are. He said all those words when he could have simply just said gun registry. But you want to know why he didn't? Because people don't like the idea of a national gun registry. So he cloaks it under the guise of not allowing cops to identify felons with guns. Didn't I tell you that the only way to enforce a universal background check is to have a national gun registry? And even then, it still would do nothing. He's literally admitting it. But but trying to hide it at the same time.
We'll also be smarter about who can buy guns. For instance, 18 to 20-year-olds are 4 times as likely to commit a homicide compared to older Americans. The suicide rate among teens has increased exponentially over the past decade. And in most states, the legal age for purchasing a handgun from a private seller is still only 18. Think about it. If you have to be 21 to buy a beer, you ought to be 21 at least to buy a handgun or any form of semi-automatic firearm.
So let me get this straight. Anyone from the ages of 18 to 20 is old enough and responsible enough to pay taxes, raise a family, join the military, and give a machine gun to them to protect this country. But they're not old enough and responsible enough to own a gun to protect their families here in the States. Cool. Since you feel that way, how about we don't count the votes of all the 18 to 20-year-olds that would vote for you? You clown. Oh, and miss me with the beer analogy. I don't see you raising the age of driving to 21. I'm sure you don't want to talk about those numbers, though.
We'll also work to adopt a 48-hour waiting period for every purchase. That is really important in preventing suicides. And we'll adopt a red flag law at the federal level, like the one Tom helped pass right here in Colorado.
Look, I don't know what they do on Cybertron, but here in America, we have this thing called due process. Why do you people think the Second Amendment is an optional amendment? Is there an asterisk in the Bill of Rights that I don't know about that says due process optional? Red flag laws are monumentally unconstitutional, and Daddy Morebucks over here wants to pass it on a federal level. You don't get to strip someone's constitutional rights simply because you're weird. If they're doing something or have done something that is dangerous, charge them with a crime. Then go to trial, get a conviction, then take their guns. Hell, a lot of people think simply owning a gun is crazy, and you now want to give them a political weapon to have my guns taken away from me simply because they disagree with my Second Amendment right? Nah, Megatron, I'm cool.
One of the biggest problems with existing background check systems has nothing to do with the database. It contains a lot of useful information about criminal history, but most of it can't be used actually to deny a purchase, and we're going to change that by requiring buyers to obtain a permit before they purchase a gun. Because just having a background check isn't enough. The question is, even no matter what the background check says, can you stop them from getting a gun when they're a minor, when they have a criminal record, or when they have psychiatric problems? This permit will allow authorities to screen applicants for dangerous behavior. And I just think about you and I in our conversation before about your son 4 months ago being shot and killed. That includes arrests for violence, like assault and domestic violence incidents, and for arrests for reckless behavior, like driving while intoxicated. Now, I know critics will say that Americans shouldn't need a permit to exercise their constitutional rights, but voting is a constitutional right, and we require people to register to protect the rights of all citizens, and this is exactly the same idea, because a criminal with a gun can destroy our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Permits have worked very well in the 11 states that have adopted them, including New York, I'm happy to say, and it's time to make the law of the land take that up.
I told you. It's all about getting a gun registry. This has nothing to do with gun violence. Criminals don't buy their guns legally anyway. Why would they go get a license to buy a gun illegally? This is stupid. He can't even sell the utility of a licensing scheme with any ounce of conviction. He's sitting there reading off the paper like he's half alive. To make matters worse, he's comparing it to having to register to vote as if that makes it okay. You register people to vote for eligibility. We have IDs and instant background checks to determine if we can own a gun. We don't need your licensing scheme, not to mention what super duper background check database are you using that's somehow gonna be better than the one we already have. You can't deny someone the right to own a gun because they got arrested. Being arrested for a crime versus being convicted of a crime are two totally different things. But you're the godfather of stop and frisk all the black and Mexican people, so none of this surprises me.
As president, I will attack gun violence from every angle. I will work with Congress to reinstate the ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, to ban 3D printing of guns, and to require firearms to be safely secured.
Keep in mind, this is the same guy when he was mayor of New York who tried to restrict magazines to 7 rounds. 7. It started out at 10. Then he tried to change it to 7. I'm telling you, the end is complete disarmament. That is his goal. Not only does he not want you to have the most effective rifle for self-defense, he doesn't want you to have access to the handguns in your own home by making you lock them up. This is nutty.
I'll work to give the Consumer Product Safety Commission the authority to adopt minimum gun safety standards, and I'll declare gun violence to be a national public health emergency, which will increase the funding available for research. I'll also increase funding for the ATF to conduct enforcement and for community-based violent intervention programs.
Please, Bloomberg has been dumping millions into fake gun research for years. There is no objectivity whatsoever about his research or any research he'll be behind. He makes up stats and cherry picks data like I've never seen. Does Bloomberg strike you as someone who values civilian firearm ownership? Like, do you really believe he respects the Second Amendment? So why would we expect any objectivity from the research put out about guns from him or whatever administration decides to do it under him?
I'll ban guns at all schools and colleges.
Does he not realize most schools are already gun-free zones? How's that working out for us considering school shootings continue to happen?
I'll work with business leaders to encourage responsible sales practices and pressure the gun industry to change.
Change how? He's acting like gun manufacturers are giving discount codes to mass shooters.
And I'll do everything in my power to save lives. Now, my agenda is not some Johnny-come-lately list of borrowed ideas. This is part of my life's work, and I'm just telling you, I will get this done, whether I get elected or not.
Understand this. Bloomberg's idea of saving lives is to control them. I mean, literally control them. All one has to do is look at the state of New York when he was the mayor, and you'll learn everything you need to know about Bloomberg. He's a plutocratic totalitarian who thinks he's a deity. He's a 70-year-old billionaire. He doesn't care about money. He's bought everything his heart desires. Beyond the accumulation of power, his life is meaningless. This is why he goes so hard on the issue. This is his attempt at leaving a legacy. The man who single-handedly disarmed the American people. That's why Bloomberg goes so hard on this issue. And this is also why he is so dangerous. So please do not underestimate this man. Right now, there's a culture war against the Second Amendment, which is why I need your help spreading our message to counter their message. You can do this by leaving a comment, sharing this video, and click the bell and subscribe button. Let my voice be your voice, and let them know you want to keep America tactical, because the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed wasn't a suggestion. It was a directive. Also, if you're wondering where to get your I will not comply, I lost all of my guns in a boating accident, the AR-15 is protected by the Second Amendment, and your state-specific Keep America Tactical shirts, click the links in the description section of this video.